Nihilism. It is a philosophy that considers all things to be pointless and meaningless. The people who believe in nihilism are called nihilists. Now, nihilists do not believe in anything at all, not in knowledge, not in actions or karma, not in destiny, not in rebirth, not in God, and not even in themselves. According to them, nothing truly exists, and nothing has any meaning whatsoever. Hearing this, you might also feel that this sounds like a very foolish philosophy, but you can easily buy into their fear. Along with you, I also used to think that my way of thinking and my perspective were very strong and absolutely correct, but is that really true? Before starting the video, here's a warning: most of this video is negative. I myself wanted the video to be positive or at least neutral, but I couldn't manage to do that. After this video, you might start questioning your perfectly good life. That's why I want to warn you in advance. From here on, it's your choice. So, let's start from the very start. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling something is off, not dramatically, not painfully, but quietly. The world looks the same. The sky hasn't changed. People still rush to work, still laugh, still argue, still scroll endlessly on their phones. And yet, inside you, something feels hollow. Not sadness exactly. Not anger. Just a strange sense that none of it really matters. You ask yourself questions you never used to ask. Why am I doing this job? Why am I chasing these goals? Why am I trying so hard to impress people who will forget me in a few years? Why does anything exist at all? And then, almost without warning, a terrifying thought appears. What if there is no answer? What if life has no inherent meaning? What if everything we care about is just a story we tell ourselves to survive the silence of the universe? That quiet moment, when meaning slips through your fingers, is where nihilism begins. Most people think nihilism is about darkness, despair, or giving up on life. They imagine a depressed philosopher sitting in a dimly lit room, convinced that nothing matters, that everything is pointless, that existence itself is a cruel joke. But nihilism is far more subtle, far more human, and far more dangerous and liberating than that. Nihilism is not just a philosophy. It is an experience. It is what happens when the frameworks you were given, religion, culture, success, morality, identity, begin to crack under the weight of your own awareness. It is what happens when you start seeing through the illusions that once comforted you. And whether you realize it or not, if you're alive in the modern world, you have already brushed against nihilism many times. Think about it. We are living in an age where traditional sources of meaning are collapsing. Religion no longer holds the same authority it once did. Social roles are fluid. Career paths are unstable. Relationships are temporary. The future feels uncertain. You are told you can be anything, yet you feel like nothing. You are more connected than ever, yet deeply alone. And in that psychological vacuum, the question of meaning becomes unavoidable. Nihilism doesn't knock loudly. It whispers. It sneaks into your mind late at night when you're alone with your thoughts. It appears when you achieve a goal you worked years for, only to feel empty afterward. It shows up when you realize that the people you admire are just as lost as you are. It's there when you understand that one day, everything you love will disappear, including you. The word nihilism comes from the Latin nihil, meaning nothing. At its core, nihilism is the belief that life has no inherent meaning, purpose, or value. No objective morality. No cosmic plan. No ultimate truth waiting to be discovered. To many, this sounds horrifying. If nothing matters, why live? Why care? Why try? But before we rush to reject nihilism, we need to understand it deeply, psychologically, philosophically, and existentially, because nihilism is not just a conclusion. It is a crossroads. Historically, nihilism emerged most clearly in the 19th century, particularly through thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche. But Nietzsche didn't celebrate nihilism. He diagnosed it. He saw it as the inevitable consequence of what he famously called the death of God. And this phrase was never about religion dying in a literal sense. It was about the collapse of absolute values, the realization that the moral and metaphysical foundations humanity relied on were human constructions, not eternal truths. When those foundations crumble, meaning collapses with them. And what remains is nothingness. Psychologically, this is devastating. The human mind is wired to seek meaning. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, once said that humans can endure almost any suffering if they believe it has meaning. Meaning is not a luxury. It is a psychological necessity. Take it away, and the psyche begins to fracture. This is why nihilism often feels like free fall. You're not just questioning ideas, you're questioning the very reason you wake up in the morning. But here's the uncomfortable truth: nihilism is not wrong. It is honest. When you strip away comforting myths and socially agreed upon stories, the universe does not provide meaning. Stars explode without purpose. Galaxies collide without intention. Nature is indifferent. The universe does not care if you succeed or fail, if you love or suffer. And this realization can either destroy you or set you free. Most people never confront nihilism directly. They distract themselves from it. They drown it in entertainment, productivity, ambition, pleasure, or ideology. They stay busy so they don't have to think. They cling to borrowed meanings because facing the void feels unbearable. But some people, perhaps you, don't have that luxury. Some minds are too curious, too honest, too self-aware to look away. And once you see the void, you cannot unsee it. This is where nihilism becomes deeply personal. You may start noticing how arbitrary everything feels. Why is this considered success? Why is that considered failure? Why do we value money, status, beauty, power? Who decided these things matter? You begin to see how morality shifts across cultures and time periods, how what is considered right or wrong is often a product of survival, power, and social conditioning. And suddenly, the solid ground beneath your feet turns into sand. This realization can lead to existential anxiety, a deep, underlying tension that no amount of distraction can fully erase. You might feel detached from people, as if you're watching life through a glass wall. Conversations feel shallow. Social rituals feel performative. You play your role, but something inside you knows it's a game. You might even feel guilt for seeing through it, as if awareness itself has isolated you from humanity. And yet, this awareness is not a curse. It is a threshold. Nietzsche believed that nihilism was a transitional phase, a necessary destruction before creation. He saw two forms of nihilism: passive nihilism and active nihilism. Passive nihilism is resignation. It's the mindset that says, nothing matters, so why try? It leads to apathy, depression, escapism. Active nihilism, on the other hand, is confrontation. It says, if nothing has inherent meaning, then I am free to create my own. One collapses under the weight of meaninglessness. The other uses it as raw material. But this transition is not easy. When people first encounter nihilism, they often feel emotionally numb. Joy feels temporary. Pain feels pointless. Love feels fragile. And the most terrifying thought of all emerges: if nothing matters, then even my suffering doesn't matter. This is why nihilism is often associated with mental health struggles. Not because nihilism causes depression, but because it removes the psychological buffers that protect us from existential pain. Consider a simple, relatable example. Imagine working toward a dream for years, studying, sacrificing, enduring stress, believing that once you achieve it, life will finally feel complete. Then you reach it, and instead of fulfillment, you feel empty. The happiness fades faster than you expected. You're left asking, is this it? That moment is a small taste of nihilism. It's the realization that external achievements cannot permanently anchor meaning. Or think about relationships. We often attach meaning to another person, believing they complete us, give our life purpose. But people change. They leave. They disappoint us. And when that meaning collapses, we are forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that no external source can permanently save us from existential emptiness. This is why nihilism feels so personal. It attacks the very strategies we use to cope with existence. At this point in the video, if you've ever felt this quiet emptiness, this sense that something fundamental is missing, I want you to pause for a moment and reflect, and if you're comfortable, share your thoughts in the comments about how nihilism has shown up in your own life. Sometimes naming the experience is the first step toward understanding it. Now, here's where most discussions about nihilism stop, at despair. But stopping there is a mistake. Because nihilism is not the end of meaning. It is the end of given meaning. And there is a profound difference. When you accept that life has no inherent meaning, something strange happens. The pressure lifts. If there is no predefined purpose, you cannot fail at being alive. If there is no cosmic scoreboard, you are no longer auditioning for existence. You are simply here. And that realization can be terrifying or deeply peaceful. From a psychological perspective, meaning is not discovered, it is constructed. We create meaning through values, commitments, and narratives. Nihilism strips away false certainty so that authentic meaning can emerge. Not meaning imposed by society, not meaning inherited from tradition, but meaning chosen consciously, despite the void. This is where existentialism emerges as a response to nihilism. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre argued that existence precedes essence, that we are born without a predefined nature, and we define ourselves through our choices. In other words, meaning is not something you find. It is something you live into. But this freedom comes with responsibility. If nothing matters by default, then everything matters because you choose it to. Your values are no longer protected by authority. You must stand behind them alone. And that is frightening. Most people would rather obey meaning than create it. Nihilism also forces us to confront death honestly. Death is the ultimate nothingness, the point where all narratives end. And when you truly accept death, life becomes sharper. Moments matter more precisely because they are temporary. Love matters because it will end. Joy matters because it fades. Meaning becomes fragile, and therefore precious. Paradoxically, nihilism can deepen compassion. When you realize that everyone is improvising their way through an indifferent universe, judgment softens. You see that people cling to meaning not because they are weak, but because being human is hard. Everyone is trying to outrun the same silence. In this sense, nihilism is not cold. It is intimate. It strips us down to our shared vulnerability. And maybe that's the ultimate insight. Nothing has inherent meaning, yet meaning still happens. It happens in moments, in choices, in connection, in creation, in rebellion against indifference. Not because the universe demands it, but because we do. So where does that leave you? It leaves you at a choice point. You can flee from nihilism, anesthetize yourself, borrow meaning without question. Or you can face it, accept it, and use it as a foundation for something honest. Nihilism does not tell you what to live for. It asks whether you're brave enough to decide. And perhaps that's the real philosophy of nothing. Not emptiness, but freedom. Not despair, but responsibility. Not the absence of meaning, but the invitation to create it. As you sit with these ideas, I want you to notice what resonates and what resists. Resistance often points to something important. Nihilism is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be clarifying. And if this video made you reflect on your own beliefs, your own sense of purpose, I'd genuinely love to hear what topic you want me to explore next on this channel. Whether it's another philosophy, a psychological concept, or a deep dive into human nature. Make sure to watch the upcoming videos here on Mindmentary, and if this kind of introspective, honest exploration speaks to you, consider subscribing. This is just the beginning of the conversation, because even in a universe of nothing, understanding yourself still matters.